right, guys, so here is the basis of our new layout. Now, in our last video where we built the tables, we said that we were going to create a layout that was 4 feet by 16 feet long, just so we had those nice long runs. But as you can see here, we changed our configuration and we put the tables side by side rather than end to end, so that we basically have an 8 by 8 square to work with. But the beauty of this is that we can change it up if we want to. All we have to do is separate the tables and then put them end to end. And you know, with the easy track, you can pull that right up and reconfigure it, which is kind of what we were going for. So we'll try it 8 by 8 here, and then we will, if we decide we want to change it, we're going to go ahead and go end to end. All right, so as you can see here, what we did was we put our turntable and our sheds on this side of the table here and connected with the track right here. This is pretty much where the track is going to go. So the first thing that we want to do before, now nothing's nailed down here or fastened down or anything like that. So the first thing that we want to do is to bury these wires under the table so you can't see them. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this turnout here and you know, put a hole or a slot in here that will accommodate this this little plug here. So this plug has to go down into a hole below that turnout in order to hide it, and then it'll dangle under the table, and then we'll run it over to the power supply. So there's that. There's a turnout over there. You can see the green wire there, and then there's a turnout over here on this side here. So we have 3 turnouts where we want to put the wire underneath the table. And then over here on the turntable, we have all the electronics here for the turntable that we have to put underneath. So basically this wire here, if you remember the turntable video, is actually under the shed here. We just have it run here just temporarily. But we'll have to put a hole or a slot in the table underneath the shed so we can run the wire underneath. And then lastly, our little track connectors here, where our power supply hits the track connector, we'll have to put a hole in here and then run those wires there. Now these wires here won't be hidden because they plug into the side of the track, but you know, we did that before and it seems to be fine. What we really just want to do is minimize the ugliness of the wires running across the table. And I think that'll be a good plan. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move the turntable out of the way so we know where the hole should be underneath the shed. So one of the things I'm going to do here is so I can figure out where the shed goes after we move the turntable, is I'm just going to make a little pencil mark here. Now this pencil mark is going to, I think, is going to lift a little bit of that grass, because the grass is very delicate. But there's lots of ways to repair that if that's what happens. So I'm just going to make a quick line here, or a set of lines. And then when we move it, we know that the hole is going to be somewhere on the inside of those lines. It doesn't really matter, just as long as the hole is completely under the shed. Okay, so we have our turntable dismantled because we have to kind of get under it and we have to move it and all that. And then we also took out one of our turnouts here. For now on, in my last video where we were talking about turnout switches and how to set those up, I kept referring to this as the switch and this is the switch. For the purposes of this video and any future videos, we're going to refer to the track as the turnout, and then the electronic switch as the switch, even though this is switch and turnout is kind of used interchangeably here. So turnout, switch, moving forward. But anyway, we pulled that turnout out of the track and we determined where the wire kind of comes out there so that we reduce like stress and you know, wire stress like pinching and crazy angles and things like that. And so what we did, you might not be able to see it, but we made a little pencil mark right here. And that's kind of where we're going to put our slot to drop it. The reason we're doing a slot and not a hole is that the little connector is pretty wide. And if we were to drop this through a hole, we'd have to have a hole the diameter of the length of that slot. And so it might be easier just to cut a little slot here so that you can just drop the plug down there lengthwise. we've never done this before, so that's what we're gonna try. And if cutting a slot doesn't work out, then we'll just get a bit that, is as wide as that, and we'll just go through it and hope the track covers it up. I think it will. But what we don't wanna have is that if we change this layout around, huge holes being left in the layout, even though they would be pretty easy to deal with. We would probably just take a dowel plug and plug the hole, cover it with some more grass or whatever. Easy to patch, but we kind of don't want to set ourselves up for that right out of the gate. So we'll go ahead and try to make a slot that accommodates that thing. All right, that connector. The other thing over here is that here's where our turntable will sit. And you can see here we scratched up the grass a little bit. Let me move those. Where we know that the turntable the back of the shed wants to sit. We can easily repair that. It's kind of temporary, or we can just kind of move the shed over it a little bit. So, but the wire placement here is going to be important, because if I turn the turntable over, you can see here the wire comes out the side and then down here, then down off to the side. So it's not centered underneath the shed. So what we did here was we made a little mark here in the grass where this kind of opening matches up, based on where the shed was sitting. I hope that made sense. Yeah, so now what the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut our slots and we're gonna drop the wires down. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna just make a couple pencil marks that will accommodate the length of that connector. So, and it can be a little bit longer. We probably want it a little bit longer. We don't want it to squeeze in there, like it has to fit exactly. We want to give it some little bit of comfortable space here. So I think about that long is going to be good. The first thing we want to do is we want to kind of cut the mat a little bit here. And the reason we're doing that, so that when we drill into the mat, we are not going to get in a situation where the drill bit is going to take up that mat and start spinning it and kind of ruin it. We want to give the mat, a little bit of relief there, so that it won't kind of turn on us as the drill bit is turning and then kind of ruin the mat. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 1/4 inch hole here. Yeah, you see how the mat just kind of jumped up on us. So one there, one here, going right through. So now we got the ends of our slot. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect these two holes. So what I have here is this is a cutout tool. This is the DeWalt cutout tool. Normally we'd buy battery powered, but this is corded, and it was a lot cheaper than the battery powered tool, even though we have the DeWalt 20 volt batteries. But we probably won't use this all that much. But anyway, we have a bit in here, a cutout bit, the same diameter as the holes. So this should just fit right down into the hole. We'll turn it on, and what we'll just do is connect these two holes. So let's go ahead and drop that down in there. Oh yeah, it fits pretty good. So as you can see, we didn't have very far to go, and that's actually kind of a big slot that we cut there. But at any rate, what we'll be able to do is drop this through here, pull it down from below, and then reattach our switch, and it's hidden. So again, this is the first time we've done this. The slot here could have been done a little bit more elegantly, I think, but it did the job, and so we'll have a little bit more experience next time we do it. But again, a lot of you are probably doing this for the first time as well, so you might as well see us do it for the first time. So what we're gonna do is clean this up, and then we'll drop our cable or our cord, and then we'll replace our turnout. All right, so with our slot cut, we can go ahead and run our cord down under the table. And then we can put our turnout back in place. Now the goal at the end of this will be to put all the electronic switches for these turnouts in a central place. So that'll be good. Can always be a little bit of a challenge to get the connectors lined up. Yeah, but there we go. So we have our little turnout there, wire hidden, so that's ready to go. Okay, so anytime we make an electrical connection, before we get too far down the road and making things permanent, we just want to give it a quick test. So we hooked up the electric switch to the turnout and hooked it up to a power supply, just super temporary here, just to give it a quick test to make sure everything works okay. So as you can see, the green feed wire from the turnout is plugged into the switch is plugged into the power supply, and he's just going to give it a quick test. And as you can see, that turnout is going back and forth just fine. All right, so turnout number one seems to be working okay. So we're gonna go ahead and move on now to the turntable. Okay, so we're gonna do the turntable now. So as you can see here, we kind of scratched into the grass the outline of the back of the turntable. We marked where the hole should be or the slot should be. So what we're gonna do here is just give this, again, we're gonna give this a little relief so that the mat doesn't want to twist up on us. Hole at one end. Hole at the other end of the slot. Another technique you could use is you could just continue to kind of drill holes right through the length here, rather than using the slot, the cutout tool. So we could actually do that here. Like I said, we just try to use different techniques, and just see. Yeah, so you can see here, the problem with that is that the bit wants to kind of roll off into one of the holes. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our cutout tool. So again, it doesn't take much, and you can see it got a little rough there, but I think we got an effective slot in there. So we'll go ahead and clean this up. We're going to run the wire under the shed. Again, plugging it into the slotted, there's a little connector that goes into there, run it down under the table. And then, yeah, we should be good to go. Okay, so now we're just gonna feed our wire up through the little slot here that we made. And make sure you got the right end in there. That's the female end there, and that'll plug into the male end under there. And we're using actually a longer extension wire. This is not the wire that came with the turntable. This is a little bit longer so that it reaches our little control center that we'll have set up here. But what we're gonna do is turn this over, and then we're just gonna, you might not be able to see that because of my fingers, but we'll show you at the end there. So there it is, plugged in. Doesn't seat completely. So what we're gonna do now is just pull up the slack, turn the turntable and line up the back of the shed with the lines that we made behind the shed. And hopefully that'll be nice and hidden. All right, so we now have our turntable wire running under the table. So you can see there, he's showing you the switch there that's all hooked up here. But on the table itself, you can see that wire is completely hidden because it's dropping below that shed. But obviously we want to test things before we put things back together too much. So he's going to go ahead and give that a turn. And as you can see, it looks like it's working pretty good. Okay, so one thing I wanted to show you here that you may want to, if you're using this Bachmann turntable, you may want to consider, is that this wire here is an extension wire, because this little wire here, let me just unplug that real quick. This is the wire that came with the set. Notice it's got two female ends, okay? And it's not long enough to run from under the turntable to our little control center here. So we had to put on an extension wire to make sure it would reach. Now the extension wires are have a female end at one end, which is plugged into the turntable underneath, but then it has a male end at this end here. And of course, those two male ends won't be compatible. So take the wire that came with the turntable, which has two female ends, and even though you've got a really long extension, wire, you'll still need this, because you'll plug one female end into the extension wire, and then that other wire will go. into your direction switch. And there you go. Just want to make sure that if you are using the Bachmann turntable and use an extension wire, and then you're like, what the heck? This plug won't fit into this. You have to use the plug with the 2 female ends. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is bury our track leads under the table here. And so what I did was I took our little connectors here and I moved them from the outside of the track to the inside, because I think that's what we want to do here, so that we reduce as much of the wire visible from where we're working as possible. So anyway, I just have these kind of test fitted in here. So I'm just going to pull this out. I'm going to make a mark with my pencil. Do the same thing here. Let's make a little mark there. We'll make the hole as close to the track as possible, just to kind of see if we can reduce the, you know, how much wire we see. Then I'm just going to pull the track back a little bit. None of this track is fastened down yet. This is all kind of temporary. And then I'm going to, again, kind of give my grass mat here just a little relief. I'm just going to make an X here. We'll just give it a nice little cross here, crisscross. If you make a mistake here, it's totally fine. These things are so easily repairable. Again, with a little bit of white glue and, you know, some loose fake grass. But anyway, oh, and the drill bit I'm using here is basically as close to the diameter of that plug as possible. I don't know the exact size of this one here, but basically what I just lined it up, I just eyeballed it and just made sure that the drill bit was just slightly bigger, so that, you know, that'll go down without the hole being bigger than it has to be. So let's go ahead and give it make a little hole here. Straight through, second one. Again, straight through. All right, so with the area cleaned off, just take your plug and just push it down into the hole. Might be a little tight especially if you got it about you know, the same diameter, but should push down. If not, just take your drill and just open up the hole a little bit. Same size bit, just give it a wave around. We'll go ahead and plug those in, and then bang. Like I said, we can just cover those up with something like maybe a little grass or a little shrubbery or something like that. Okay, same thing here. We'll just pop that down. And you know, we could have gotten the track that has the leads under the track and hide them just like we did on the switches, but we're just working with what we have here. We have these tracks here that, you know, with the power connections there, so we're just going to work with those and should be fine. So anyway, there is your track connections you made. Again, you can see a little bit of those wires, but we'll try to hide those as we move forward. So, but I think they'll do the trick. Okay, so we have to bury the cord or the wire for one more switch. And this time around, I thought I'd show you one other technique that you can use to make your slots to push the wire down that does not involve that cutter tool or the cutout tool that we were using before. That turned out to be a little bit hacky, so I'm gonna try a different technique, and I think it'll work just fine. So the first thing we have to do is remove our switch. So again, we're gonna cut away a little bit of the mat. So the next thing we're gonna do is make our 2 drill holes. Go right through. Oh, by the way, one of the reasons that we're doing a different technique on this is where these switches are sitting, underneath is that the double thickness plywood. Do you remember when we did the tables in the last video? We put some extra plywood underneath to kind of keep the plywood from cupping or, you know, otherwise kind of warping. So this is actually, these switches are over that, and that cutout tool will only go down about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter with the bit. So we have to go down deeper anyway. So this is probably a better option for a thicker wood. Let's go ahead and clean this up a bit. So for the next cut, we're actually going to use our jigsaw. So what we're going to do here is just cut between the two holes. I'm actually going to move this track out of the way a little bit. Get that right down. All right, that should probably do it. So we'll drop our wire down. And we'll go ahead and reattach our switch, or our turnout. I should probably say turnout since I made such a big deal about using the proper terminology earlier. All right, so that looks pretty good. Wire successfully hidden. All right, so as you can see here, we have our wires hidden. Most of our mess is cleaned up. Let's get that switch right there. And then again, you can still see those track wires a little bit, but I think we can hide those. And then way over there, it's kind of a side angle. You can't really get a great look, but that wire's hidden too. That's the one we just did with the jigsaw and the drill. So given the two methods, using a cutout tool to kind of join the two drilled holes to make our slot, and the jigsaw method that we just did, I think the jigsaw method is actually the neater way to do it. So if we ever have to do this again, which I'm sure we will, I think we'll just make our slots using the drill and the jigsaw. So we got the shed back up assembled here. So yeah, basically we'll just take Thomas for a quick run around the track and just make sure everything works all right. And there he is going around the outside loop. All right, I think that is going to do it for now. And we'll see you in the next video.